Something about the way Mark Labbett talks about knowledge always feels different from the usual television soundbites. There is a quiet authority in it, the kind that comes from years of sitting across from contestants under studio lights and still treating every question as if it matters. When the chase star known as the Beast shared 3 simple tips that he believes can help ordinary people win a pub quiz every time, it landed with a particular kind of weight. Not because the advice was flashy. Because it felt honest. You could almost sense the collective lean-in from people who have spent Tuesday or Thursday nights in their local, pens hovering over answer sheets, hearts racing a little when the quizmaster reaches the history round. Mark's first piece of guidance was straightforward: learn your fundamentals. And nothing, he said, is more fundamental than the kings and queens of England or Great Britain. They come up time and time again. It sounds almost too obvious until you sit with it. How many of us have watched a perfectly capable team fall apart on a question about who followed whom, or which monarch sat on the throne during a particular war? The knowledge is not exotic. It is the scaffolding. Mark was not offering a secret code. He was pointing back to the foundations most people skip once they feel they already know enough. What struck many viewers about that particular tip was the way it reframed preparation itself. In an age of endless scrolling and half-remembered facts from social media, the idea of deliberately learning a list of names and dates feels almost old-fashioned. Yet there was something comforting in the clarity of it. Mark has spent more than a decade as one of the most recognizable faces on daytime ITV. He has seen every kind of contestant walk onto that set. The ones who thrive are rarely the ones who know the most obscure answers. They are the ones who have the base layer solid. Watching him deliver that advice, it almost felt as though he was speaking directly to the version of himself who first started taking quizzes seriously years earlier. His second tip carried a different kind of emotional texture. Practice, he said. Decide how seriously you want to take it. It is like golf. There is nothing wrong with playing the occasional game, but if you want to do it seriously, you have to put a fair bit of time in. There is no shortcut. The golf comparison was telling. It acknowledged the pleasure of the casual night out while gently refusing the fantasy that improvement happens by accident. Some people watching online seem to recognize themselves in that distinction. The ones who turn up every week more for the company than the competition. The ones who quietly keep a notebook of questions they missed. Mark was not judging either group. He was simply naming the difference between them. There is a particular kind of respect that builds when a professional refuses to pretend the path is easier than it is. Mark has never hidden the work. He has spoken before about the hours of revision that sit behind those rapid-fire answers on the chase. Hearing him apply the same honesty to something as everyday as a pub quiz felt almost intimate. It was not a television personality performing expertise. It was someone who still treats knowledge as a craft, offering a window into how the craft is actually built. Then came the third tip, and this was the one that seemed to make people smile the most. When you do not know the answer, especially in questions about fruits, vegetables, or flowers, lean on the most common options. There are more varieties of apple than anything else. More potatoes. More roses. So if you have no idea, go with apple, potato, or rose. Sometimes you get lucky. The practicality of it was almost disarming. After the seriousness of fundamentals and practice, here was the quiet admission that even the beast has moments of educated guessing. And that those moments can still win points. Many people watching seemed to appreciate the humility in that. It humanized the figure who so often appears on screen as an almost unstoppable force of general knowledge. Mark was not claiming perfection. He was sharing the small strategic instincts that sit alongside the hard-won knowledge. In that sense, the tip felt generous. It gave ordinary quizgoers permission to use probability rather than freeze when the answer will not come. One online commenter even added their own variation. When a soap opera question appears, It is usually EastEnders or Coronation Street. Just pick one. You have a 50% chance. The conversation that followed felt less like celebrity worship and more like a group of people swapping practical wisdom. What lingered after the tips themselves was the atmosphere around them. Mark has always occupied an interesting place in the public imagination. He is large, imposing, nicknamed the Beast, yet the moments that stay with viewers are often the ones where a flash of humor or quiet reflection breaks through. Sharing these 3 pieces of advice on a platform like TikTok, away from the formal structure of a television interview, felt consistent with that. It was knowledge offered without ceremony. The kind of thing a regular might lean across the table and tell you between rounds. There is something deeper at work in the way audiences respond to this kind of content. Pub quizzes occupy a particular corner of British social life. They are competitive without being ruthless, communal without demanding perfection. They reward both memory and the ability to laugh when the answer is hopelessly wrong. When a figure as closely associated with high-stakes television quizzing as Mark Labbett chooses to speak about the everyday version of the same pursuit, it creates a bridge. The studio lights and the sticky pub tables feel momentarily connected. Some people watching seem to take the tips as motivation. Others simply enjoyed the glimpse into how a professional mind approaches the same questions they face on a Thursday night. Either way, the exchange felt more than transactional. It was a reminder that the pleasure of knowing things does not have to stay locked inside a game show format. It can travel back into ordinary rooms, ordinary conversations, ordinary evenings where the prize is a bottle of wine and the real reward is the shared concentration. Perhaps that is why the advice continued to circulate. Not because it promised instant victory, but because it treated the desire to improve as legitimate. Mark did not dress the tips up as revolutionary. He presented them as the accumulated sense of someone who has spent a long time paying attention. Fundamentals. Practice. Intelligent guessing when the knowledge runs out. Simple. Clear. Rooted in experience. And maybe that is what stayed with people most. In a media landscape that often sells shortcuts and secrets, here was one of the most recognizable quiz minds on British television saying, essentially, do the work, learn the basics, and when you are stuck, use common sense. The atmosphere around those 3 tips felt quietly encouraging rather than intimidating. It left room for both the serious competitor and the person who just wants to get one more question right than last week. What do you think when you hear advice like this? Do the kings and queens tip make you want to go back over the list one more time? Have you ever used the apple potato roast strategy without realizing it had a name? Or does the golf comparison ring truest for you? The reminder that how seriously you take it is a choice rather than a fixed identity? Moments like this keep circulating long after the original videos stop trending because they touch something ordinary and lasting. The quiet satisfaction of knowing a bit more than you did before. The small thrill of getting a question right that used to defeat you. And the sense that even someone who earns a living from being nearly impossible to beat still sees value in sharing the foundations that make the whole pursuit possible. Perhaps what lingered was not just the 3 tips themselves, but the feeling that knowledge, when offered without pretension, still has the power to connect people across the distance between a television studio and a corner table in a local pub.